Welcome back everyone. So today we're going to be comparing a growth-based stock versus a dividend-based stock, and as you can see from the title, we're going to be comparing AMD versus Intel. Now before we jump into the content, if you can give the video a thumbs up, it really helps the channel out. Now as for a portfolio update, I just want to call out that I invested in the likes of Intel, AMD, and also the Renewables Infrastructure Group. That brings us to a total account value of over 19,000. The return at the moment is slightly under 10%. For the most part, companies are mostly in the green. There's only a handful in the red. I mentioned a while ago that with the likes of Lloyd's, I may consider selling some of the shares. On my end, I'm now in the green for this company. Now I may still consider selling, and that's because they suspended their dividends. But assuming those dividends do come back, let's say in the new year, then the stock price will jump up even higher. So for now I'm going to keep everything as is, and that's all there is to the portfolio update this week. So for those unaware, both AMD and Intel are semiconductor companies, and at its basic level they effectively design processors which are in everyday laptops and mobile phones, and historically Intel has outperformed that of AMD. Now in recent times AMD actually faced development issues with their 10nm chips back in 2018. Those development issues had a knock-on effect, resulting in shortages with their 14nm chips. And so for the PC makers that had existing contracts with Intel, they became frustrated because the supply wasn't met. And so AMD was available to fulfill that supply. And so currently AMD outsources their fabrication to other companies such as the Taiwan semiconductor. And so as it stands right now, we have Intel that is claiming that their new 10nm chips are comparable to the Taiwan semiconductor 7nm chips. But the fact of the matter is the Taiwan semiconductor company is going to be providing 3nm chips by 2022. Now when I talk about 3, 7, 10nm chips, all this means is that there's a high number of transistors per millimeter square. In the past this used to reference the gate length of the transistor, and so if you make it smaller then you can pack more transistors, which effectively means more switches, and so the actual microprocessor is able to perform much faster than the predecessors. So if you see a lower number, then that just means there's a higher density, and that equates to the product being superior. So for the foreseeable future, there is an expectation that AMD is going to continue to stay ahead of the game. Now there's some things to call out here. With the likes of AMD, they actually sold their manufacturing lab in the past and they formed a new company called Global Foundries. Now Global Foundries has partnered with other companies, which is the Taiwan semiconductor company. And so we have a third-party company that provides these higher density chips. Now I would argue that potentially this could be a problem. If there's any issues with the third parties, then AMD could struggle with supply issues in the future. And then if we take a look at Intel, well, they actually manufacture their silicon chips, but they're still stuck on the 10nm transistors, and that was because their 7nm fabrication resulted in degradation when attempting to manufacture, and it's expected to be late 2022 or early 2023 based on their recent earnings call. Now of course this is a negative because of the delay that Intel has faced, but in the future it could be a positive given that they still have their own fabrication lab. So when it comes to AMD, and we have them on the screen at the moment, the current stock price trades at a premium. There's also no dividends supplied, so that's something to keep in mind. And if we take a look at Intel, well, because they do provide dividends, we generally see less of a variation in the stock price, but the price of the stock is much lower to that of AMD. But for the most part, we have Intel that is cheaper than AMD. Having a quick look at the difference in the earnings. So although Intel has been beating expectations, it's on a declining trend. And from the last quarter, they just met their earnings expectation. Overall, the earnings are positive down here. And then with AMD, we have earnings beaten, also on an upward trend from the previous quarter, and then earnings are also positive. So my honest viewpoint here is that both stocks are good to own. I own more Intel on my dividend portfolio. I'd happily own more of AMD, but the price is definitely overvalued right now. I do feel as though both companies have equal risk when it comes to issues with either outsourcing their fabrication or having it internal. And so if you own both of these companies, then if one goes down based on fabrication issues, then the other one's going to go up. And vice versa, if the third party company struggles, then you still have Intel, assuming they can fix their supply issues. So the question I have for you this week is, out of AMD or Intel, which company would you most likely invest in? Let me know in the comment section below. So let's jump into some news now. We have Bill Gates stating that more than 50% of business travel will disappear in the near future. So when it comes to business travel, for the most part, this type of business can be conducted from online meetings. Generally, it's just an excuse for business executives to have a holiday. But with the ongoing pandemic, this level of risk is predicted to be minimized by having less business travels. And so we have Gates stating here that there'll be a very high threshold for conducting business trips, given that working from home is a more feasible option. There's going to be some situations where business executives have to travel in person. There's still some situations where you have to sign papers in person, but it's expected to count as a small proportion. For most of us, this doesn't really change any of our day-to-day aspects. It may just mean that you'll bump into the CEO more in future if you work in an office environment. So thanks for watching, everyone. New content is out every Friday at 3:30 PM GMT. If you are interested in this type of content, then do hit the subscribe button. And with that said, I'll catch you in the next one.